Okay, thank you. They'll probably be at the end, right?
Yes, or whenever
Okay, we're
you'd
now
like.
live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Universal Peace Federation webinar today. My name is Ray Lapalkin. UPF is an international and interreligious network of individuals and organizations, including representatives from religion, government, civil society, and the private sector, which is dedicated to achieving world peace. An NGO in consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN, UPF supports the work of the United Nations, particularly in the areas of interfaith peace building, peace education, and the strengthening of marriage and family. Our webinar today is sponsored by one of the associations of the Universal Peace Federation, the International Media Association for Peace, which we like to refer to as IMAP, and it's an association of media professionals. IMAP recognizes the vital role that journalists play in guarding against totalitarianism and supporting the expansion of freedom. IMAP represents a worldwide professional network of journalists who support a socially responsible and moral media to convey accurate content, address the challenges of our time based on the highest principles of ethical journalism, and understanding our universal values are key elements to a world of peace. Our topic today is titled Reining in Gender Ideology in the Classroom, and what role can the media play in this? And our moderator today is Jennifer Trench. Jennifer has navigated a varied and eclectic career driven by curiosity, creativity, and a commitment to impact public opinion. Her professional journey spanning journalism, publishing, graphic design, advertising, and photography reflects her adaptability and a wide-ranging talent. In the 1980s, she co-founded and published the Newswatchers Network, a newsletter dedicated to scrutinizing media with insightful analysis and with contributions from a diverse group of readers and commentators united in calling out media bias. Jennifer is honored to re-enter the media arena with the IMAP team, aligning her voice and energy with the fight for parental rights, championed today by leaders like Tina Descovich and Cheryl Wetstein. She holds deep gratitude for her country and her faith, proud to be an American and a daughter of God. Now living in the Berkshire Mountains of Western Massachusetts with her beloved 18-year-old cat Ivan, Jennifer treasures frequent visits with her 3 children and 8 grandchildren. So, welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ray. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly IMAP webinar. I'm so glad you could all be with us today. My name is Jennifer Trench, and it's my privilege to welcome 2 remarkable women, both steadfast defenders of parental rights, especially when it comes to guiding the education of our children and grandchildren. Today, we'll explore foundational values of the parental rights movement, the battles being fought, and the victories being won. We'll examine what's happening in classrooms, school boards, courts, government, the media, and even within the families as we work to ensure that parental rights are upheld. I'm honored to begin by introducing Tina Descovich, co-founder and CEO of Moms for Liberty. Tina has been a powerful advocate for students and parental rights in Florida and across the nation. In 2016, she was elected to the Brevard County, Florida School Board, and 2 years later, her peers selected her to serve as chair. And she also led the Florida Coalition of School Board Members as president. Sorry, my phone was ringing. She has worked in both public and private sectors, including the U.S. Army and the National Air, Space, and Sea Foundation. In 21, she co-founded Moms for Liberty, a national nonprofit that unites, educates, and empowers parents to stand up for their rights. Today, the organization has over 300 chapters in 48 states and over 150 members, 130,000 members, I'm sorry. Tina now serves as executive director. She's a frequent guest on major media outlets, including Fox, CNN, ABC, MSNBC, C-SPAN, CBS, and more. She currently hosts Fire of Liberty, a weekly live online show. She and her husband, Derek, are the proud parents of 5 children, and she remains deeply committed to protecting liberty and freedom for the next generation. Tina, I'd love to begin with your opening remarks. Please feel free to introduce Moms for Liberty to those here who may not be familiar with it, and share what inspired its founding and highlight any current events you feel are important. And I must say, there's certainly a lot happening and new things popping up every day for you guys. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you so much. Yeah, with 130,000 moms and dads and grandparents across the country, you can imagine there's a lot of activity happening. Sometimes I don't even know what's happening in some of the local chapters. I see it on the news and I'm blown away by what parents are willing to do to save this country and to protect their children. I put together a presentation here, if I can figure out how to do it properly. I could zip through some of these slides rather quickly here. Can you see my screen, Jennifer?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay. I'm just going to go through to give you guys a little bit of an introduction to Moms for Liberty, the fight that we've been doing, some of our wins, and then I will wrap it up. So we are Moms for Liberty. Our mission statement is that we're dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. We know at Moms for Liberty that once you lose the right to raise your children, once the government starts making decisions that parents should be making on behalf of children, that your family is going to be broken, and ultimately that will lead to broken communities and a broken country. And so for me, when we started Moms for Liberty, I was serving on a school board with my co-founders. They were on different school boards, but we all served on school boards, and we were seeing those lines getting blurred every day. And we were very frustrated. We were trying to sound the alarm. No one was paying attention. And then COVID happened, and all parents, all eyes were on school boards and what was happening. And so we knew that that was the time to galvanize support for the issues that we saw were important. And so we launched this little organization that we thought was going to be in Florida only. I wrote a 5-year business plan, and in 5 years, I thought we would cover the state of Florida with 67 chapters. We are only 4.5 years old. And as she said in the introduction, we have over 300 chapters. We're in 48 states with 130,000 active moms and dads on the ground. And our vision is Americans, all Americans thriving in a culture of liberty. And we have 3 values at Moms for Liberty. We stand for truth, we build relationships, and we empower others. Overall, the biggest problem we believe that we have in America is that our education system is completely failing children. 67% of 4th graders in the United States right now are not reading proficiently. Schools were closed for years in this country. And then what's being taught in the classrooms is divisive, it's radical. The sexualized curriculum, gender ideology is being adopted by whole states and being pushed into pre-K, that's 4-year-old through 12 classrooms. And actual policies are being put in place in school districts at state and federal levels that are dividing families. And then I just have a few slides here, just some headlines for your pleasure. Not one student was proficient in 23 Baltimore schools in math. I mean, these headlines, these are 3. I could put these up all day long. We at Moms for Liberty believe that America is in the middle of a cultural revolution, and that public schools and our children are the targets and the primary battleground. I know when we first launched, we thought this was the case, but we didn't want to say it out loud because we thought people would think we were extreme or crazy. And I think America over the last 4 years has seen that this is actually true. These letters here in this photo were actually written to us from school children that believed, I guess, what their teachers were telling them, that we are a hate group because we're standing for truth. And so,
Excuse me, Tina, I'm so sorry. Do you think you could move closer to the mic, maybe? It's a little bit faint for some of the listeners. It's fine. I can hear it fine, but some people can't, I guess.
Sure. Is that better? I can use my mom voice too, which is much louder if that needs to be. And then I don't know how closely you guys have been paying attention to what's been being taught in classrooms across the country. This is just one sample. It is being taught across the country. It was being taught in Florida schools everywhere, elementary schools, helping children understand their gender identity which is not based on their sex at all, male or female. It is teaching them as young as 4 that they can be a boy or a girl, neither or both, and that they can change their identity from day to day, and that their identity is based on things like how they feel, or if they like to dress like a boy, or if they're a tomboy, then they probably should be a boy. And we'll talk here a little bit about why that is such a problem in America today. These are other things that are being taught. This is Black Lives Matter at Schools curriculum. We pulled these from some New York City schools that were being taught. They actually celebrate Transgender Day of Remembrance. They focus on queer organizing. So there's just numerous lessons like this. And we could show you, I have a whole, binder behind me of documents and lessons and things that children are taught to celebrate outside of learning to read. And as we talked about in the beginning, only 1/3 of Americans, 4th graders can read, and yet they're celebrating and spending whole days and weeks celebrating things other than reading math, science, civics, literature. This is just one sample of identity and gender support documents. So these are not often they're not policies, but they're procedural guides that are put into school districts. It was happening all over Florida when I was on the school board. And I remember calling one of my friends that was on a school board and saying, she was telling me that she found out it was in her district. And I said, oh, never would that my school district adopt that. I live in a very conservative county. My superintendent is a conservative Christian man. They would never put these support guides in place. And the problem with these support guides, they're meant to support LGBTQ students, which sounds lovely, except often you have the child, so a minor gets to pick what they want their name to be at school, what they want their pronoun to be at school, which restroom they want to use, which locker room they want to use, and where they want to sleep on overnight field trips. You'll see that highlighted on the bottom of one of these pages. And what's worse is then in many of these, it says they have the option of letting their parents know that they've made these decisions or not. And often parents were excluded. And you'll see in a couple of these stories coming up in a minute how excluded parents were. So there's here's some of the policies at the state level that are concerning. The whole state of New Jersey adopted teaching gender identity in K-12 instruction in every school in the state. California, the whole state passed a law that they were going to keep critical information from parents, like these gender policies, where students could change their name and their identity. And the California law actually forbade schools to adopt policies saying that parents had to be notified. And as we're seeing coming out of the Supreme Court right now, Supreme Court is affirming that parents have the right to know these things. And so there's going to be a lot of legal battles coming up as these things play out. And then if you were paying attention, last year, the US Department of Education under President Biden actually rewrote Title IX. Title IX was enacted in the 70s to protect women's sports, to give them a fair opportunity to play with just women, but it also protected their spaces, their locker rooms, and their restrooms. The Biden administration rewrote Title IX from a very small document to hundreds of pages that put gender identity as a protected class, which pretty much nullifies Title IX. It said that if a boy thought he was a girl, he could play in their sports, he could go in their locker room, he could use their restroom, et cetera, et cetera. And so at all levels of government, you will see that our children are under attack. Women, female, girls are under attack. And honestly, truth has been under attack. This is January Littlejohn. She is a member of our Leon County, Florida chapter. And she is actually a licensed mental health counselor who has supported and helped LGBTQ students. But when her daughter showed up at school one day saying that she was struggling with her gender identity, the school used one of those forms that I just showed you, filled it out, and then she signed it as a minor. And she said that she didn't want her mother to know. And when her mother, she alluded a few days later to her mother that she had signed something like this. And when January called the school, they said they weren't allowed to share it with her. And this went on for a long time. Legal battles. January has appealed. There's been court cases against it. She has spoken publicly over and over. It's now, 3 or 4 years later. Her daughter is doing well. Last I saw on social media, she was headed to prom with her boyfriend, and all is well now. But what her mother has had to do to protect her from what the school was doing to her is astonishing. In around Jacksonville, Florida, there was a set of parents that got called to the school because their daughter tried to commit suicide in the restroom. And to make a very long story short, when they pulled her records, the school was socially transitioning her. And then in the notes, it actually said when they did a public records request, or when the attorney subpoenaed the records, it actually said that the school did not share with the parents because they were Catholic and they would not understand that she wanted to change her gender. And so this is going on. These aren't unique cases. It's happening all across the country, and it's still happening even with President Trump's executive orders and with all the fighting we've been doing and with state laws. This is in Texas just this February. Again, a school was socially transitioning a child. One of our moms spoke about it at a school board meeting, and Governor Abbott opened an investigation. And now ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, is suing the school district on behalf of that mother. Let's see what we got here. So challenges on educating people on gender ideology. It's just so bad that people still don't believe it's happening. Unbelievable, if you believe that or not. Most people just read the headlines. And so when we talk about media, the media's role here, mainstream media they're manipulative. They believe one side of this issue. And so they make it appear that those that are speaking out against it are doing it in a hateful way instead of just speaking truth. It's very hard to argue in the media in sound bites when critical terms have been changed. I'm sure you've read that in federal documents, state documents, governors of whole states have tried to change the word mother to birthing person when they're trying to confuse sex and gender and what that means. And now the ideology is being embedded in pre-K, so 3 and 4 year olds. And so children that are growing up now think it's completely normal that there's sex and then there's a gender identity, and that's different. For those of us that are older, we hear gender, we hear sex, we think it's the same thing, and that there's only two. Kids that are growing up now believe that there's 47 plus different genders. And so trying to get them to understand or believe that there's only a male and female is, now you're fighting against what they've learned at the youngest ages. We're up against toxic empathy right now, being overly empathetic to the point that it's harming. And then being nice is prioritized over truth. Long story short, Moms for Liberty's been fighting like crazy. I'm not going to read this whole slide to you, but the attacks we've been under for the last 4 years would stop anyone in their tracks except for, mothers, I would say. We've had our social media account shut down. We've had our PayPal frozen, our assets frozen. The Department of Justice put a threat tag on moms that were showing up at school board meetings. FBI agents were calling our mothers. They're making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and getting calls about their mental stability after speaking at a school board meeting. And if there are weapons in their house, and if they're just insane things. FOIA documents are now showing that the Department of Education labeled us as their enemy. And then the SPLC added us to their hate map, which has been very challenging for us. We've had endless attacks online, cyber attacks with millions of dollars poured in to attack us when we do not have that kind of money to fight back. So we know that we are making progress because of the attacks we're under. And we know the American people agree with us. This was national polling that was done. 67% of the American public know that education's on the wrong track. And then this slide, I'd like you to really take a look at, because the question was, do you favor or oppose teaching elementary children as young as kindergarten about sexual orientation and transgender issues? 71% of Americans strongly agree with us that this should not be happening. And if you look over on the right, pro-choice agrees with us, 64%. Urban people that are living in cities, 62%, Hispanic, 69%, Black Americans, 60%. Everybody agrees that this should not be taught in school. And so the solution is that we must speak truth boldly. We must equip the next generation early, lead with conviction, compassion, and clarity. And we do that in a number of ways. Moms for Liberty is building the grassroots army to fight back. And I just want to state loud and bold that the best way to do this is to love, and to love at home, and to love your children early on, to root them in truth, integrity, find a foundation to them at home that when they get out there in the world, it's unshakable. We have to equip them with real knowledge, not just slogans. Don't be dismissive when they come to you from what they're seeing at school and in the media and in movies and cartoons. Have empathy, not toxic empathy, but have empathy and not judgment when dealing with these issues at home. The other solution is moving on with this grassroots work. We fight it at every level. We're driving the narrative by doing social media, speaking at school board meetings. We're passing legislation at the state level, and then we're working to get new people elected. When I say we're driving the narrative, we take every media hit that comes in. Anybody that wants us to speak, we speak. We go on aggressive media that hates us. They twist our words. We do not care. We try to get in an ounce of truth. And every time we do that, we find new people that are willing to hear and willing to listen, even when they lie. 60 Minutes did a horrible hit piece on us. They recorded us for 3 hours, did a 20-minute segment that cut and chopped us to make us look horrible, but people saw through that. And then long form podcasts right now are the ideal way to combat all of this in the media. Getting detransitioners on there, folks that have been harmed and can really tell their story. It is the most moving and impactful way, I think, to drive the narrative right now. We host community events, town halls across the country. Here's just a sample of a few on topics like gender ideology to educate the public. We open them up to the public. We open the microphones up to the public so they can ask questions. Yes, we get protesters. Yes, we get angry people. Yes, we've had to have them removed with law enforcement. We make sure that, we have security there. We try to have an open and honest dialogue. And I think this is really important to moving forward in our country. Basically, we are working to take all the ground in this area. There's no room for compromise when driving this information to our children. And then just to summarize some of the wins in the last 4 years, we've gotten 55 bills in 14 states signed into law on all these variety of issues. We have won over 500 school board seats. We are fighting to take school boards back and put parents in those seats. Some of our members have gone on to win state house and now state Senate races. And we've had massive legal wins. We sued the Biden administration after the Title IX rewrite, and we won a federal injunction that said, if you are a member of Moms for Liberty, your child's school is exempt from, I don't know, I lost this, guys. We'll just go on here. Your child's school is exempt from having to implement the Title IX rewrite. That was a major win for us. Our membership growth obviously exploded at that time because parents wanted to protect their children from boys in their daughters' bathrooms and boys in their daughters' sports. And so we've won various other lawsuits around the country, First Amendment lawsuits and such, but we just keep driving forward. We use every tool in the toolbox that we can, every legal right that we have in the most joyful way to fight the indoctrination that's going on in schools, the gender ideology that's been put in place to confuse children, and honestly, to improve education in America. Because if we have a citizenry that is uneducated at the level that they are now, we're kind of doomed as a country.
Well, thank you very much.
I know that was a lot of information.
You've pretty much answered all my questions.
No, I did not mean to do that. It said prepare a presentation. And so I just wanted to make sure you got the lowdown.
Thank you. Yeah. And one of the few questions that you didn't answer was, I've been following you a long time, since 23, when you revised Biden's revision to Chapter 9. And I immediately joined because I have 8 grandchildren, all of whom are in elementary school. And I needed, and when I was searching, I found your organization. And I sent in the names of their schools. But at that point, I'm just a grandmother, so I couldn't tell my daughter or my son, my children suffer from toxic empathy. And I couldn't tell them, this isn't an attack against your children's friends in school or against anybody. It's just an attack against who's using them and who's trying to develop all of this hate in the schools or towards, people who are against these things. So anyways, you had so many victories, and the one that you didn't mention that well, it's not actually, yeah, it is a victory because the NEA, which is the school board, which is the school trade union, has really gotten way off to the far left, and they are probably one of your big detractors. And recently, a senator and a congressman both sent a bill, or they're preparing a bill to go towards the Congress to defund the NEA. Could you explain just a little bit about what that means? As far as, how do you defund a union like that?
So the National Education Association is the only teachers union that it has a federal, it's the only teachers union that has a federal charter. So it has a congressional charter from 1909, I believe. The only
Right.
other organizations that have federal charters are like the Red Cross, the Boy Scouts. And so you have to ask yourself why a teachers union has a federal charter. Pretty much has the stamp of approval from the federal government. Now,
Right.
look at the NEA and the items that they have voted on over the last 4 years that I've been following them in their summer conferences. It is shocking. There's never anything about education or learning or, learning gains or improvement on the way you teach, nothing like that. Curriculum, nothing. They have voted on things like abortion. They have voted on Middle East policy multiple times. They have voted on this last summer, so just like 3 weeks ago, they voted to use the term fascist when referring to policies that President Trump has passed. They actually voted on that. And in the article they voted on, it actually spelled fascist wrong, like just to make
Right.
this worse. They are the most political entity right now that you can possibly imagine. Their teacher of the year in her speech said that being a teacher now is one of the most political jobs. It is a political position. And that's exactly what we're fighting against. Like, children should not know if you lean left or right, if you're a Republican or a Democrat. They just need you to teach them to read and to do math. And so we have coalesced a group to fight against this and ask Congress to revoke their federal charter. And so we've got Representative Congressman Mark Harris out of North Carolina to sponsor the bill. Senator Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee is sponsoring on the Senate side. And we've had a dozen or so others sign on to co-sponsor so far. And we held a press conference last week out on Capitol Hill. And we demand that Congress votes to revoke their charter. And so it doesn't necessarily defund them at this point because they get their money from teachers. In some states, teachers don't even have a choice, right? They have to belong to the union. In other states, they have a choice, but they have to pay into it because they're afraid they won't have any representation or they won't have insurance or all of these other things, which also isn't true. And so we are just asking that Congress removes its stamp of approval on the National Education Association right now.
Okay, thank you very much. And as I say, you've answered most of my other questions. So I would, at the moment, I'd like to go to our next speaker and introduce her at this time. So I'm very pleased to introduce another vital voice in today's conversation. And her name is Cheryl Wetstein. And Cheryl is an award-winning journalist with 40 years of experience in New York and Washington, D.C. For 33 years, she worked at the Washington Times, reporting primarily on national family policy issues. Her reporting from 94 onward focused on welfare reform, child support, divorce, and the rise of LGBTQT, blah, blah, and gender-related policies. Cheryl has received multiple honors, including the New York Press Club's Cub Reporter of the Year and the Heart of New York Award. Today, she serves as a senior advisor for Times Global Media Group and supports IMAP through editing, consulting, and media advising. She and her husband, Douglas, live in Maryland and are the proud parents of 3 adult children and grandparents of 2. So, Cheryl, we'd love to hear your reflections, both from your journalism career and your current media work, on how groups like Moms for Liberty are impacting the media landscape, and how can both mainstream and alternative media help educate the public and influence policy. Welcome, Cheryl.
Glad to be here. First of all, I want to congratulate Moms for Liberty for their excellent win at the Supreme Court on the Mahmoud case. It was truly a case for the people, by the people. And in the end, the Montgomery County Public Schools was told, yes, you have to notify parents that you're going to have LGBT story time, and you have to give them the right to opt their children out. So this is a tremendous win. And basically, the Supreme Court affirmed its 1925 ruling, where it said, the child is not merely a creature of the state. So there's our parental rights right there. There's a million more things to say about the case, but right now I'm going to touch on the origin of the gender ideology battle in the classroom, and then close with a few comments about media relationships and why I think, as a retired reporter, Moms for Liberty is well poised to do very well in these culture war battles. I was a news reporter for 40 years, lots of stories there. But I spent more than half my career writing about family issues and 20 years solely working on the LGBT issue, because gay marriage arose in the mid-90s. So there was a gay marriage battle in every single state, many sessions of Congress, a couple of White Houses. So it was on and on for 20 years. And for a long time, it seemed that America was going to keep its one man, one woman marriage law over the unprecedented, historically unprecedented idea that two men could legally marry, or two women. And this is because, if you'll remember, in the late 1800s, the territory of Utah wanted to join the United States, but it had a problem. It had polygamy. It had men with many women trying to get married. And basically Congress said, no, you got to abandon that if you're going to join the United States of America. So back then, the federal position on marriage was crystal clear about who could marry. But as the years rolled on, judges began agreeing with the gay plaintiffs, and before anybody really kind of knew it, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of legalization of gay marriage in the United States by one vote, by the way, in June 2015. Now, I mention this history because, according to my interviews at the time, the swiftness of the victory of the gay marriage issue took even the gay leaders by surprise. They thought they were going to have to fight this fight another 5 years or so. But poof, gay marriage is legal, and their huge flagpole issue is gone. So here they are with gobs of money and massive network of very trained activists and huge visibility and momentum. They just didn't have an issue. So enter the T wing of the group, the transgender wing. The initial big issue with transgenderism was actually adult bathroom access. I remember writing about some bus drivers, and they're going to court because they needed to get off the bus and use the restroom. But in the cases of men dressing as women, they're getting harassed or thrown out of the bathroom. So bottom line, here's a headline for you. The trans people in transportation wanted potty parity. They wanted a place to pee in peace. Now, this issue, which seemed comical at the time, eventually got far more serious and migrated over to the schools. Because now this is where it exploded. Because nobody wanted boys dressed as girls in the girls' bathroom. But again, judges were busy ruling left and right that boys could do this if they felt like it. And this elicited a massive pushback from families and, of course, the girls. So anyway, all the vast resources, networking, and activist assets flowed to the trans issues, which is why this issue just keeps percolating and getting bigger and bolder. And it went right into many schools where now from kindergarten on, there's drag queens and LGBT storybooks and schools transing the kids without parents' knowledge. So one more comment about gender ideology. And I'm so glad you even had that graph on the gingerbread man. A great deal of this sources back to one madman named Alfred Kinsey. This scientist should have stuck to his wasps and his insects research, but instead he turned to human sexuality, and he has left us 80 years of garbage about human sexuality that we still have to wade through. Kinsey pretended to be a married Christian man with kids and everything like that, but he was a not so closeted homosexual who did all kinds of deviant stuff. And he's the one that told us children are sexual from birth, which is why kindergartners need to know about LGBT issues. He gave us the outrageous lie that 1 in 10 of us are homosexuals. Well, study after study after study after study finds that it's right around 2% of the population are gay males, and less than 2% are lesbians, and even tinier portions are bisexual or transgender. In fact, I know of a federal study from the 1990s. 33,000 people were interviewed very extensively in a way that they would talk about their sex lives and sexuality. Out of 33,000 people, exactly 3 said they were transgender. That is how infinitesimally small this population was, at least according to the federal government in the 1990s. So I'm grateful, and I hope that Moms for Liberty, among others, will read about Alfred Kinsey. To go back, that's kind of like your mother lode. That's where the root is. My favorite book is The Alfred Kinsey, A Life by James H. Jones, big biography, I should say. So turning to the media, what can anyone do? Well, actually, Moms for Liberty looks well positioned to take on any media, from those idiots at 60 Minutes, sorry folks, to the local podcasters. Congratulations. I'm delighted to see that Ms. Deskovich herself has a lot of media experience, and as executive director, she is the go-to person. Everybody's going to land on her email and on her phone. The Moms for Liberty website is very comprehensive and quite media friendly. There's a way for reporters to contact Moms for Liberty and a press area. This is all excellent. Then I was glad to see there's a substantial staff that supports the grassroots to grow their subject matter expertise and their activism. And that means that when your chapter leaders get grabbed by a reporter, they're going to have some intelligent comments to offer, which is very important. You have to support each other in that. And finally, Moms for Liberty has Gold Star resources and allies. I saw a lot of familiar faces on your website, Tina. A lot of people. There's a lot of opportunities for joint events. Papers can be prepared for the media. One last thing about parental rights. I was covering Phyllis Schlafly when she was going after schools for the Snoopy surveys they were doing. They wanted to know where you stood politically, little 8th grader. They wanted to know if you liked your parents. They wanted to know what dreams do you have about sex and other things. And Phyllis Schlafly, who is really an iconic figure in our country's history, just smashed against those surveys. And that's where kind of some parental rights issues got started. So anyway, it's great to be here. I'm hoping there'll be some good questions, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Tina, and to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And yeah, I see there's a lot of questions in the chat, and Tina's been following them and has answered a few of them. Are there any in particular that you found that you wanted to talk about, or did you just want to give us some closing remarks?
Sure, I'd be happy. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for you were talking about Alfred Kinsey, and I just want to say that This is an original book from whatever year he published, 49, 50, whatever that was. I had never heard of him until after I started Moms for Liberty. And the genderbread person is what started me down that rabbit hole. It
Yep.
used to be genderbreadperson.org. And I went to the website. A mom had sent it to me from Palm Beach County and said they were using it in their schools. And so then I looked at it, and then I went to the website, and right on the front page, it's taken down now, but right on the front page of genderbreadperson.org was, this is a great way to teach your kids, blah, blah, blah. And then it said, and it's based on the great work of Dr. Alfred Kinsey. And I was like, who's that? I Googled and found these books. And I didn't want a reprint of the book because I don't trust anybody anymore. But I was reading some things about the book, and I was horrified. And I thought, that can't be true. So I went and found original copies and ordered them from an old bookstore and spent way too much money on them. And I sat for 3 days and cried. I had migraines after this. I couldn't even believe. I've had people tell me like I shouldn't even have this in I shouldn't have it in my house. So now it's in my office because they're like, it's demonic. And it is.
It is. It is.
I don't know about those watching, but he tried sex out on infants, and he's got charts in there about when they timing them, how long it takes them to come to arousal. 6-month-olds. I mean, it is despicable. And so once you really understand the roots of all of this stuff, you can't unsee it. You can't sit down and be quiet. You can't say, oh, but the little girl thinks she's a boy. Well, you know what? This is the roots of that. And it's like, it can't be good. And so can't come at people in today's world with this book and with this right out the gate, like their brains can't comprehend it. They have to kind of get there on their own. And so that's why we launched, I put it in the chat over there, m4lu.org, which we are about to have to rebrand, long story with the name, but basically it's tools and resources at all levels for people to kind of take small bites out of these issues so they can understand them. Little videos, long videos, lectures, discussions, white papers, resources, tools, anything you need. We take an issue a month, and we've got 30 months planned out. So I think we're only 4 or 5 months in. So I hope you'll check that website regularly. And then to answer the question up there about the Mahmoud case in Montgomery County that you brought up when you first started speaking, it's just remarkable because you're right. In 1925, the Supreme Court said parents have the right to direct the upbringing of their children. 100 years later, practically to the date, they had to rule again because parental rights are under attack, because parental rights are that's it. Once those are gone, like evil has won. And so it's just so important that we stand protecting parental rights. And there was a question over there about parents, is there options for them to opt into things? And on my podcast last week, I had our chapter chair from Carroll County, Maryland, and she worked with her school board to create an alternate curriculum for their family life studies, they call it, because the state infused it with gender ideology. And so they've had it in place for 2 years now. And the first year, just a handful of parents opted out of the other and opted into that. So they did a blitz the whole summer, last summer. They went to the fair, they went everywhere to tell parents, to educate them about what was in the state's curriculum and how the new curriculum was written that you could opt into. They got half of the school district to opt out and then opt in. And so it takes one-on-one work like that. It takes education. Not a lot of school districts have that option yet. And so it's going to take moms, dads, grandparents, family members to work with your school districts to get better options. And then it's going to take a ton of work to educate your community.
Correct.
Yeah. And the local PTAs don't help much either these days because they're very political too, right?
Yeah, the PTA itself is a national organization with local chapters, and it's bought and sold by all of these ideologies. There's PTOs, which are local and independent, where you get a lot more opportunity to stand for truth, but really they're to support the school in the sense of funding for playgrounds and, classroom supplies. And so Moms for Liberty is the only answer, in my opinion, to the local grassroots fight right now in schools.
And to get into a school board meeting for a parent is awfully traumatic as well, because they're one person facing this whole school board that's automatically going to say, well, it's not up to you, it's up to us, right?
Yeah, you need a few people with you. I mean, you can go, obviously. It just feels a whole
Right.
lot better to have 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 people with you, standing with you, because the union brings, 5, 10, 20, 100 on what they're
Right.
standing there for. And so it's nice to have a few people with you.
Well, I think this fight isn't just in America either. It's happening in Canada. It's happening in places like Italy. I mean, it's happening all over the world. So Moms for Liberty can be a real beacon for these people and create, such a good example and hope. And I just think it's the foundation of our country is our children's liberties, not just ours, but theirs. I mean, we have to be able to enable them to fight for their rights and to show that they are, God-centered people eventually, right? Hopefully. So what we need is more people like you and more people like Cheryl, who's devoted her life to this cause, and also people like IMAP, which I'm proud to be a new member of, that is trying to make ways for media to be heard. For a lot of reasons, media isn't paying attention to Moms for Liberty. So we need more people in the media to do that. And IMAP is setting a good example for that. So I'm really proud to be part of them as well. Um, Anyways, you've gotten a lot of questions about all these, and I don't see any that I'm just kind of glancing through them here to see if there are any. Ray, do you have any that you've seen that might be interesting?
Yes, I'd like to bring your attention to one. I thought it was a very good question from Dr. Robert Kittle.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we're talking about a lot of the programs within the schools that from the LBGT agenda, but are any schools doing any programs that are, let's say, positive? In other words, talking about character and responsibility, and in other words, programs that the students can opt into rather than opting out of, as Dr. Kittle put it.
Yeah, I mean, I think most programs in schools right now have been infiltrated, especially the social emotional learning programs. And so they brought these into the school under the guise of helping students regulate their emotions or helping them to build their character. And then they riddle them with LGBTQ ideologies and other, I would say, queer theory, if you really want to get into the depths of it. And so you just have to be cautious of all of them. The programs right now I would opt into are after school programs. There's like the Good News Club and some of these other clubs after school or before school. And honestly, you have to shore your kids up at home with prayer and with stability, and teaching them in those young ages, from 0 to 5 before they get to school. Homeschool if you can. For middle school, my son went to a private Christian school, which was just lovely, but he's back in public school for high school. But he's got a good foundation, and I think he can take that on during the day. I wish I had better answers for you. I know in our private chat with all of our leaders across the country, it's constant. People are saying, does anyone know about this program? Does anyone know about that program? But there's always something. Our Tennessee chapter in Williamson County spent 1,000 hours reviewing the K-5 reading curriculum. And what they found riddled through there was just awful. And it's interesting when you research it and lay it out like that. The chapter chair there was a former B-1 bomber pilot, so very military mind. So she had them all do what you call a red team, and they logged everything they found concerning, and they stuck it up around the room and watched the trend. Where in kindergarten they were learning about seahorses, you would see that as a parent of a kindergartner and not think there was a problem. You would be like, oh, how cute, they're learning about seahorses. Well, seahorses, and I don't even know if I've got the story right exactly, but the men carry the babies, or the men birth the babies, or it's something unusual. And so again, not a huge deal. It's science, it's a fact. But then when you watch the curriculum, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and you watch them build on that, you see what they're doing. And the curriculum was wit and wisdom curriculum. And, we got abused terribly, saying we're afraid of seahorses and all of these things when we laid out this whole problem of what we saw happening by 5th grade on how they were teaching you that your gender is fluid, basically, is what they were trying to say. And that men could have babies and all of these things, all rooted in the fact that your brain at 5 was like, oh, seahorse men can have babies. So men that are 50 can have babies. It's just the most bizarre transition if you watch it. But here's the thing. I spoke to the state superintendent of schools at the time because our chapter filed a lot of complaints with the state. And I spoke with her last year, actually, and they filed it a couple of years ago, but I spoke with her last year. And she said she talked to the creator of the Wit and Wisdom curriculum and asked her if that was intentional. And she said, absolutely, it was intentional. And so I couldn't believe she admitted it, but they absolutely are trying to put it in math word problems everywhere. So, what is there to opt into? I would be cautious about everything going before your children right now.
Right.
All tainted.
Yeah, in fact, that's the reason I even joined Moms for Liberty, is because a school that my grandchildren go to, had a book in their classroom called Gender Queer. And what happened was the janitor came through cleaning the classrooms one night. Yeah. And he saw that book and he was appalled, right? Because this is a janitor, anyways, he called the police in town. And they came because they thought it was a case of pornography or something that was going to do harm to the children. Well, it was. But having the police come and search the classroom was a no-no. Yeah, that's the kind of,
Exactly.
it was a comic book, quote unquote. So, of course, it caused such brouhaha in the town because the parents were upset that the police got involved, and then they sued the police. Eventually, the teacher left and went to a different state. She said she feared for her life. But anyway, she meanwhile was suing the school, suing the police, and this suit is going on, and it's still 3 years later. It hasn't been settled or anything. But anyways, that's what actually drew me to Moms for Liberty in the first place, was what happened there. So yeah, I think for people out there who are feeling like the voiceless, you are providing a voice. And even for a friend in church whose cousins were upset because their children, one of them was wanting to transition, and they didn't know what to do. Where do we go? How do we fight back? Because it was being taught in the school. I mean, that's why they wanted to do it, is because it was being told it's okay. Anyways, that's why.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I was going to say I had another question.
Good. Sorry.
I'm sorry if I didn't want to interrupt you, though. But anyway, just kind of perhaps a related question is, Tina, do you ever involve yourself at all with the voucher issue? In other words, rather than opting out of a program at school, you can opt out of the school and go to another school. Are you involved in those issues at all?
Yeah, we support school choice because we support a parent's right to direct the upbringing of their children, including the education of their children. I will say that because we have local chapters in different states, not every Moms for Liberty chapter supports school choice. We have a lot of chapters that are very homeschool centric, and they're concerned about school choice. They don't want government funds or government regulations involved in their ability to homeschool, like in Texas, where there's no home checks, and you don't even have to register to say you're homeschooling. And so they are a little bit more cautious there. But in general, we absolutely support a parent's right. And who wants a kid to be assigned to a failing school because of their zip code? It's morally wrong, in my opinion. If you're going to mandate school as a society and a government, you can't mandate that they go to a failing school. I just think that's that's morally wrong. If I could address the lady's comment here, she's saying it's her first event here, and she feels like, and I'm not deeply familiar with your group and how your conversations go, but I would like to address this because there is obviously evil behind the source of all this with Kinsey and some of this other stuff. Like, anyone that wants to argue with me that that's not evil, I will argue with you all day long. But a child who's confused about their gender is not evil. A child that's confused about their gender is very vulnerable and needs to be loved and cared for. They need to feel supported, but they don't need to be lied to. And I believe that if you affirm, it's affirming their gender dysphoria. And so you can do it in a loving way. You can guide them and help them through. I absolutely believe that we should have honest, open, caring discussions about what's going on. I do not think it needs to be nasty. And if I could just add that we did a town hall in Colorado recently about House Bill 1312 out there, which was stomping all over parental rights. And when we do our town halls, we open them to the public, and a segment of the LGBTQ community came, and they usually come and honestly, they carry on, they hoot, they holler, they scream, they yell. This time they did not. They asked very serious questions of me and the panel legislators. They got, I think, quality answers. We dug in on where parental rights start, especially with adopted children in the foster system that already come in and have transitioned. What do you do in these nuanced situations? And afterwards, I had several members of the LGBT community come up and say, thank you. Thank you for holding this forum. Thank you for taking it seriously and listening to us and allowing us to ask questions and communicating back and forth. And she said, for the first time in a very long time, I feel hopeful about the future of our country, that we are going to be able to move forward in some fashion. And so I just want to reiterate that in my opinion, love is the way forward here. But love also means truth.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, ladies.
I'd like to add one thing about media, since we're closing in on the hour, which is that as a reporter, it's very hard to get contact with children and teenagers. I always had to enter the school building and get permission to be there. I couldn't just talk to kids. I couldn't just go up to teenagers and ask them things because I'm a reporter and it's not proper. So finding, the LGBT groups were very excellent on giving me access to young people who had a story to tell. And I'm hoping that Moms for Liberty is also doing the same thing, because that's when you can really have an excellent story for the readers, is to tell both sides of the story through the eyes of young people and teenagers and their parents and whatnot. So filling in that gap is very good, because like I said, there's plenty of young people with opinions. It's just that reporters are really not supposed to go on school grounds or in other places to get it. So thanks.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's many things we could touch on, but I think this is a good example and a good introduction to people as to what is going on and how we can help. And so I would like to read my little script here. As we bring today's webinar to a close, I want to offer my deepest thanks to our two distinguished guests, Tina Deskovich and Cheryl Whitstein, for their courage, wisdom, and dedication to defending parental rights and American values. And to all of you who joined us here today, I want to thank you very much for coming and for helping us to fight this battle by at least being present in the fight that is going on, even though it's not a fight so much as it is a cry to be a good American, a good parent, and a good child of God. So thank you very much, all of you, and